Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Michelle and I am the owner of LilyRoseCraftroom. And for today's video, we're going to be making these cute little cuties. I made 3, but for the sake of this video, I'm only going to show you guys how to make this one. They're all the same, but just this color. So everything I'm going to use, I'm going to put it down in the description below. And some of the products are from my shop, LilyRoseCraftroom. Before we get started, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell so you guys don't miss on any new videos. All right, let's get started. All right, so we're starting off with the prep tumbler. I prepped it by using vinyl sand. And now we're just going to squeeze some acrylic paint straight on the cup. And this also works instead of spray painting, just to create a base. And this is also a different method you can use to stick on the glitter. There's so many different ways to make tumblers. I'm always switching it up so you don't have to follow, exactly what I do. Just do whatever works best for you. So after giving this an even layer, I'm gonna let it fully dry and then I'm gonna give it a second coat. So here it is fully dry after about 15 to 20 minutes. And make sure it's fully dry because if you go on with the second layer without it being fully dry, you're gonna brush off the paint that you had before and it's not gonna give it good coverage, it's gonna look splotchy. So just make sure it's fully dry before the next coat. So I'm just gonna fast forward it here just a little bit. Nothing too special here. All I'm doing is just giving the cup an even layer of the acrylic paint. And if you need a little bit more paint or you see some areas drying, go ahead and add more because we're gonna be sprinkling the glitter straight on to the wet paint. And the glitter that we're gonna be using today is called Cuddle. And this glitter was inside the monthly glitter subscription box for January. If you don't know what the monthly glitter subscription is, it's on my website at LilyRoseCraftroom.com. And it's available only from the 1st through the 7th of each month, depending on availability. And what you get is 5 new unreleased glitters every month that may or may not be themed. And the cool thing is you guys get it before it's available on the website to everybody else. This is a monthly subscription box, so you'll be charged every 30 days until you cancel, and you can cancel anytime. Before we move on to the next step, I did wait for the acrylic paint to dry, and then I'm going to be giving it a second coat with some amazing sealer, and this is by Illumilite. And I do have a code linked down on my description. So if you want a discount, use code LILY10. So I wanted a better coverage on the cup, so that's why I'm going to be giving it a second layer. This, you don't have to do it, but I just wanted better coverage and an extra shine, so that's the reason why. And what this amazing sealer is, it's basically like a Mod Podge. But I just like it better because I could dip my paintbrush into it and just brush it right on. Make sure if you're using this product or Mod Podge to give it only a nice thin, even layer. Thin layer. Because if not, if it's happened to me, I made a thick layer and when I turned it upside down to dry, the sealer started running down the cup. So it ruined my cup and I had to start all over. So just make sure it's a thin layer. And while the cup is still wet, go ahead and sprinkle the glitter onto the cup again. And once your cup is all glittered, wait for the sealer to dry about 1 to 2 hours. And then you're gonna spray it with the clear spray paint so you can seal in all that glitter. Silly me wasn't recording when I epoxied this cup. I thought I was, but I didn't. I'm sorry. So what I did, I used 10 mLs of part A and then 10 mLs of part B. Mix that in together until it's clear and then just epoxy that right on. That's for the first layer. The thing I like about this Illumilite Quick Coat Epoxy is that it's completely dry within 4 to 6 hours. so you can give a second coat of it in half the time of the regular epoxy. I'm making multiple cups, so that's why I have a big cup of epoxy, but in reality I'm only using about 10 mLs, so 5 of A and then 5 of B. After the epoxy is smoothed out, I use a heat torch to pop all the small micro air bubbles. Alright, on to the next step. I let this cup dry overnight. So now what we're going to do now is sand the edges and any rough spots. So I'm just going to grab my palm sander, and this palm sander is really good compared to like a sanding block, because when I used to sand with the block, my fingers and my hands used to cramp a lot. So with this sander, it's way easier. All you have to do is just rub the cup with it. It vibrates, so you know, it makes it way easier. So I'm just going to go along the rim of this cup and the bottom and anywhere that I feel anything rough, because we're gonna be putting the vinyl next. So we need a nice smooth surface. I got this sander from Amazon. I'll leave the link in the description below. And the sandpaper that it has on is 120 grit, and you can buy extras and you just replace it whenever it gets dull. So once you have it sanded and smooth, you're gonna take it to the sink, wash it up, and now it's time for vinyl. I went over on Etsy and I purchased these kawaii cartoon emoji faces from MinimoleStudio's shop. I will put the link on the description down below. She had these really cute faces and I just couldn't resist, so I'm using her designs. So I'm just making sure everything here is nice and even before I make it official. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just using my scraper tool to make sure it's really pressed on before I take off the transfer tape. So now I'm just going to layer all the pieces, piece by piece, how I seen it on the picture. So let's do that and then we'll move on to the next step. So now that you have everything layered and placed on your cup, it's time to seal the vinyl before we do the epoxy drips. So now we're just going to seal in the vinyl. So I have a large cup of epoxy because I'm doing multiple cups, but I'm only using about 10 mLs of epoxy. So 5 mLs of part A and then 5 mLs of part B. So after you evened out your epoxy, what I use is a heat torch, and this pops any micro air bubbles. And I like using the heat torch better now because the heat torch just pops all the air bubbles, and the heat gun melts the epoxy even more and it just makes it really, really runny. So the heat torch just instantly pops them. Alright, so I let the cup dry all night, so now it's ready for the drips. We're going to be using Nice and Thick, and this is from Counterculture DIY. And this is a 2-ounce sample bottle, and this one was $5.99. And for the epoxy, we're going to be using Amazing Quick Coat by Alumilite. And this epoxy has become my favorite because it doesn't smell, in my opinion. So this is my go-to now. If you're interested in trying out this epoxy, I do have an affiliate discount code on the description below, so you can use it to save some money. I recently got these squeeze bottles from Amazon, and they have been a life changer. I used to just pour onto my little medicine cups from my big gallons, and it would be so messy, but with this one you just squeeze right onto it and it's just so easy and mess free. And I haven't had any problems with them dripping, so I 100% recommend these. So I'm using 10 ml of part A and then 10 ml of part B to make it a total of 20, but in reality you only need about 5 of each. I use too much. Okay, so the next step is pouring the epoxies together and mix them up until they're clear. And you really want to mix until you don't have any more ribbons, because if you don't, your drips are not going to be hard. They're going to dry sticky. So next, we're going to be adding glitter into the epoxy because I like my drips sparkly. And this glitter is called Wonderland, and it's a beautiful white rainbow translucent glitter, and it's super beautiful. So I'm going to be putting about 2 scoops of my jumbo popsicle stick into the epoxy, and I'm just going to stir and mix until everything is nicely mixed together. Alright, so the next step is adding mica powder, and this is a white mica powder, and what it's going to do, it's going to add a really pretty, like a pearl look to the epoxy. So I'm only adding about 2.5 scoops. So you're going to mix that in really well, and then next we're going to be adding the acrylic paint so we can make sure the epoxy is not so see-through when we do the drips. So with this paint, I'm only adding 5 drops. So once we have the epoxy the color that we want, we're going to be adding the nice and thick, and we're going to be adding it in small batches because you can always add more, but you can't take some out if it gets too thick. And this powder flies all over the place, so what I like to do is just fold it in until everything is just inside and then stir it up. And you're just gonna keep stirring and adding until it's the right consistency, and you need it to be like caramel. So I'm just gonna be adding more. So this is scoop number 3 for me. Still wasn't good enough, so this is scoop number 4. So now we're on to scoop number 5. And the reason I'm adding so much is because I have a lot of epoxy and I really didn't need it all. So if you're only doing a smaller batch, you're not gonna have to put that much. So it still wasn't the right consistency for me, so I let this sit for about 3 minutes and then I'm gonna give it a test drip. Before you do the whole cup, you should do one little test drip to see how fast it drips. That way you don't ruin the whole entire cup. So just kind of watch it, and if you need to wait a little bit more, wait a few more minutes to get the epoxy to like a more caramel state, and then you can do the whole thing. And there's different ways to apply the drips. This is how I like to do it. Just rub it around the rim of the cup and it will drip on its own. If you're holding the cup like how I am, like tilting it, make sure you work fast, because if you don't, your drips are gonna start angling and you don't want that to happen. You just want them straight down. So work fast or put the cup flat on the table and do the drips like that. Next, I'm gonna start putting more epoxy up on the top so it looks like the whole thing is covered in icing. And if you want more defined drips, just grab a little bit of epoxy and just scrape it on the edge of the cup just like that, on the places that you think need more like of a defined drip. And then for about like the next 10 minutes, you want to babysit your cup. Just keep an eye on it, make sure the drips are not dripping too low. And if it is, all you have to do is turn the cup upside down. And make sure if you turn the cup upside down, make sure you're on a silicone mat. That way the epoxy doesn't get stuck to the table. So here it is after about 15 minutes. And before the cup completely cures, I want to put the sprinkles and other little decorations on the cup so they can get stuck in there. This is another cup I was also working on, and I'm just going to flip both of them over because I don't want them to drip anymore. So next I have a tweezer, and I'm just going to be putting in the sprinkles one by one, and I'm just going to push them into the epoxy. And the reason I'm doing them one by one versus just sprinkling them on there is I want to have more control on where they go. So that's the reason why. And then I'm also working fast because the way I'm holding the cup, the drips are going to start to curve. So that's why I'm putting a little bit and then rotating it. That way I keep the drips straight. I also carry these sprinkles on my website at LilyRoseCraftroom.com. So if you needed some, I have some currently available. Next, I'm going to be using this glitter called XOXO. And it's heart-shaped glitter, and this was also in the January subscription box. So I'm just going to be putting these individually one by one on the drips on the places that I want them to go. Just put them on carefully with the tweezers and kind of push them in, that way they're nice and stuck. So I'm just going to fast forward this part or else it's going to take forever. All I'm doing is just adding more sprinkles and more glitter hearts to the drips, just wherever they look good until I'm satisfied with it. This is all the sprinkles that I'm going to be putting on, and you still want to make sure to babysit the cup for about another 30 to 40 minutes because it is still wet and they might still drip slowly. So what I'm going to do, because I want it to stop there, I'm just going to flip it over upside down for about 5 minutes and then come back to it and then flip it over again. Alright, so this is the cup the next day. So as you can see, the drips, they didn't drip down any more than I needed them to. So you really got to keep an eye on the cup when it's still wet just to make sure they don't go down more than you need them to. So next step that we're going to do is I'm going to clean up the top rim, and then I also got some epoxy on like the face of the cup and on the bottom while I was doing the drips. It just got on my finger and I smudged it on there on accident. So I'm just going to sand that off a little bit, and then I'm going to give it another layer of epoxy just to bring the shine back and also to seal in the little glitter hearts. What I'm doing right now is just cleaning the rim of the cup with the blade, just scraping off any of the epoxy that got on the cup. And we're going to be doing this again later, so it doesn't have to be perfect right now, but we will be doing that again later. So like I said earlier, I got epoxy on the face of the cup, so I'm just sanding it off with some sandpaper. Just trying to get that epoxy off, and then I'm gonna give it another coat of epoxy just to bring back the shine. Alright, so after the cup is sanded and washed, I'm going to be putting some epoxy. And again, I'm going to be using the Alumilite Quick Coat Epoxy. And it's a total of 10 mLs. So 5 of part A and 5 of part B. So you're just going to pour that on the cup and spread it evenly around with your gloved finger. Alright, so I let the cup dry overnight, so now we are officially done with this cup. So before you ship out any cup, you have to make sure to clean the inside of the cup and clean the rim. The last thing you want to do is send out a gunky cup. It's just gross. So I'm going to show you guys how to clean the inside and the rim of the cup. So you're going to take your blade and just scrape along the top edge of the cup. And we don't have much on this cup anymore because we did this before we put the final coat of epoxy. So I'm just cleaning up what I had left over. So to clean the inside of the cup, you're going to need some pure 100% acetone. So what this does, it's going to clean off any spray paint that got into the cup or any epoxy. Just anything sticky in the cup, it's going to clean it up. So you're just going to pour a little bit acetone onto the napkin and just clean the inside of the cup just like how I'm doing. And now you can see the inside of my cup is all clean. So now what you have to do after is just wash it with soap and water. Alright, that's it for today's video, and like always, let me show you guys the finished look. Here is the Cutie. And not every cup is going to be the exact same because the drips fall just randomly wherever they want to fall. So here is my version of it. And yep, that's it for today's video. If you liked this video, if you found it helpful, give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.